everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of Empire State Hoops. I am Adam Rothschild alongside Matthew Vargo. Today we have to discuss the off-season moves that the New York Knicks have made, and we have a lot of other topics to discuss today, along with the training camp coming up on October the 3rd, which is about a week from today. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Adam. Love to be here.
So just tell us a little about yourself and what's excited you the most about Empire State Hoops so far.
Well, podcasting, it's just a lot of fun, just having a couple guys just sit back, talk about sports. It's just a fun pastime. Although, not a Knicks fan, 76ers fan. It's not looking good for us right now, but this is about the Knicks, so I'll separate my feelings for the Sixers to the side, and also let's just get right into it.
And yes, these New York Knicks. So, to start with the offseason, their big acquisition was Donte DiVincenzo. And he came over from the Golden State Warriors. He's going to be a huge player off the bench to have. And he's going to be a huge, reliable asset. Matt, what do you have on Donte DiVincenzo for us?
Well, I think it's about Donte DiVincenzo. Nova guy, loved him there. Believe he won the most valuable player after they won the Natty in 2018. So, always grateful for that. But, I think it's a good pickup for the Knicks to have him come off the bench. He was good for Golden State last year. Believe averaged around 10 points a game off the bench for the Warriors. Pretty good. He was the starting point guard on that Bucks team that won the title in 2021. I think he got injured during the playoffs and couldn't play the rest of the way. But still, he's a good player. I think he'll contribute nicely. Good 1-2 punch off the bench alongside Quickly. Yeah, just more depth for a team and also another asset if they choose to make a trade down the road, but we'll see where it goes with that.
Yeah, this was definitely a huge move for New York, but the minuses that they had, they lost Derrick Rose, who signed with the Memphis Grizzlies in free agency to partner up with John Morant and try to maybe motivate him a little bit more. And the one trade that a lot of people questioned, Obi Toppin to Indiana for 2 second-round picks.
Okay, so the thing is about Derrick Rose to the Grizzlies, it was, he signed there, right?
Yeah, signed, yep.
Okay. Dare I say that's now the Guns N' Roses backcourt in Memphis, but that's besides the point. Man, Derrick Rose, I love D-Rose, one of my favorite players to watch growing up, but he's just kind of at the end of his prime. Well, not really his prime. His time in the NBA is coming to a close. I still think he could be good as like a motivator for the young guys. He didn't really get a lot of action with the Knicks last season, only played in 27 games and averaged 5.5 points a game, mainly in garbage time, mainly because Quickly elevated above him in the rotation. I believe he was second, and Quickly was second in Sixth Man of the Year voting last year, so he was just kind of obsolete for that reason. And Toppin, see, I liked Obi Toppin coming out of the draft. I believe that was the 2020 draft, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And again, Tibbs has a reputation for just not playing the young guys, and I think it was just a bad place for him to land. Didn't really get much spin, although I think he stepped up decently against the Cavs when Randall was out during the postseason. We'll see what he does in Indiana. I think he can be good now that he'll get more playing time on a worse team because they got nothing to lose. So I don't think it's quite as big of a deal as some Knicks fans thought. I'd like to see what you had to say about it, but I personally don't think it was that big of a deal.
Yeah, Obi Toppin was definitely a major part of this bench for the Knicks. Losing him is probably a minus, but you add Donte DiVincenzo, like we said before, he's actually a plus because he's going to play a lot more minutes. He's a shooter. That's something the Knicks really needed. Obviously, they tried that with Evan Fournier, and that didn't work out.
He's still on the roster, right?
Yeah, he's still on the roster, but they just, like, Tibbs just took him out of the rotation, and now having DiVincenzo in there is going to be a plus, but the one thing that was good about Obi Toppin, he can just do a little bit of everything. And, I mean, that's what he's going to be able to bring to Indiana because he's going to be playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton under head coach Rick Carlisle. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But the expectations for this season, the Knicks have over 20 games on national TV. They have a home opener against the Boston Celtics. They're going to play them twice in the preseason to get ready for that. What should their expectations be?
Well, in my opinion, if I'm the Knicks, you got to look at who are the other major contenders in the East, and you and I can both agree. The Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks. I guess you could say the Heat. Was the Heat just more of a flash in the pan, or is this actually a top 4 seed in the East? I'm more inclined to believe that they will be a top seed in the East next year. those are really the only like mainstays that you can clearly say, at least in my opinion, who are better than the Knicks, because the 76ers are on the decline. Cleveland just kind of are running it back with the same group, and the Knicks beat them in the postseason and they beat them in the postseason, so they wouldn't worry about them in the standings. The Bulls, just kind of whatever. I think they need to be gunning for a top 4 seed once again, kind of build off the momentum of last year, finish around, I don't know, I would say try to push for the 50-win marker. If you win 50 games, get into the postseason, win a series, I'd say, again, a successful season. Now, would you like to see a jump? Yeah, you would, but I just don't think they're ready yet to make a jump.
Yeah, probably once they get like that superstar talent. Like we've heard rumors about them looking out for like Giannis and stuff like that because they don't know what the deal with him is going to be over in Milwaukee. But one player on the roster that I think we should look at for a breakout season, R.J. Barrett. I think it's about time that he's coming out of that comfort zone going into year 4, and he's got a chance to be a really, really good player. And it's a good thing the Knicks didn't give up on him because he had a really good season last year.
Well, R.J. Barrett, now listen, is he ever going to be a superstar, game-changing talent that he was drafted with at the 3rd pick of 2019? No. But last year, he played 73 games, which is a lot considering the amount of load management going on. And I'll give credit to the Knicks as a quick side note. Like, Tibbs and those guys don't believe in load management, which is refreshing to see where everybody's sitting out. But, you could probably argue that last year was the best year of his career. 19.6 points a game. Field goal percentage a little bit iffy in, like, the lower part of the 40%. Would like to see him get it up to above 45. 31% from 3, not great. I'll, again, like to keep that around 35%, which is around his career average. But I feel like, another year with Jalen Brunson, another year in this system, is it possible for him to make another jump? I mean, sure it is, but I feel like R.J. Barrett on a championship contending team needs to be like your 4th option, kind of like how Andrew Wiggins was with the Golden State Warriors in 2021 when they won the chip.
Yeah, I was going to say that's similar. The one thing I love about this Villanova trio, bringing in Josh Harden was a great move, and you add DiVincenzo to that. These 3 are going to, play together so well on the court. And, like right now you could just envision a lineup of Brunson, Hart, DiVincenzo, Randall, and Robinson and how that would go. And speaking of Julius Randle, the one thing that I noticed last season, he has to control himself in certain situations, not just in the playoffs when he wasn't playing well in certain games, but just in general, just around the refs and stuff and just, stuff like that. He's got to figure it out. Yeah, I see you putting your thumb down about that.
Okay, the thing is about Julius Randle, he's a type of player he's kind of like a rhythm player. I mean, I believe he was an All-Star last year on the reserve team for the All-Stars in the East. Well, I guess they drafted. I don't know. I kind of want him to go back to the East-West All-Star game, but that's the point. But yeah, he's kind of like a rhythm player where if he's hot, if you remember against Miami, I believe it was kind of like an under-the-radar game on a weekend. Dropped close to 40, had the game-winning 3 over Jimmy. When he gets hot, he is on. But when he is off, again, we saw with the Heat in the postseason, it's just really hard to watch. It really is. And it wasn't like he was amazing against Cleveland. I just think if he can learn to be more efficient and just kind of control himself, then yeah, he should be an all-star again. But I think the big question with Randall, obviously, is the postseason. Can he shake off the early bugaboos of the postseason?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something to look into, especially if the Knicks make a big run later on in the season. But speaking of the big men, we have Mitchell Robinson as our starting center, but our 2 backups, Isaiah Hartenstein and Jericho Sims. Do we expect Tibbs to put Sims in a lot more with Hartenstein in there as well in the mix, even though he wants to still run this 9-man rotation, which is what he's been doing consistently? But the question is, how many minutes will Jericho Sims get behind Isaiah Hartenstein?
Well, I feel like Isaiah Hartenstein, he actually stepped up really well against the Cavs in the postseason. The offensive rebounding advantage that they had throughout that whole 5-gamer, big reason for it. I just think that obviously they don't have a superstar big, and now really in the modern NBA, you don't really need to have a lot of bigs. I mean, the Warriors operate on pacing and small ball lineups, and now the Nuggets, obviously an outlier because, I mean, you got Jokic, but I don't know. I just feel like I would imagine that Sims would get more playing time than he did last season because I believe last year was only his second year. But again, this is Tibbs, and never wants to play the young guys too much. His veterans always get the minutes. I wouldn't see any reason why they would fall out of the rotation unless they're just a complete liability. That's just kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, that's another way to look at it too, definitely, because Jericho Sims has talent. You can see the way he's mainly kind of like a younger version of Mitchell Robinson when he was just dunking early on in his career, but still has some potential to be a starting center in this league. Another thing that we have to talk about is the training camp. The Knicks are doing their training camp at this proposed location in South Carolina. They haven't done this since the 90s, and this is probably a good way to go about things, especially after the success they had last season, and talking about what they did in the 90s with all those big playoff runs of the finals in 94. And what's your take on that, Matt? How do you feel about this training camp in South Carolina?
It's going to be at the Citadel in South Carolina. Shout out to Dan, our SID boss. He used to work for the Citadel, funny enough. I just kind of feel like, it's cool to have them going around to a place that, doesn't have an NBA team. Bit more exposure. Although, do they really need any more exposure? I mean, it's the New York Knicks, so...
Yeah, exactly.
I just kind of see it as more of a fun distraction more than anything. But who knows, It just seems cool to me. I don't really have much to take from it.
Yeah, it's just something special, I think, that the Knicks are doing because some teams have done training camp in France and outside the country and all that. I feel like it's just something cool. It's like a nice tradition that this franchise is doing.
Didn't the Rockets used to do some of that in China
when they had Hakeem, I think, or was it?
I remember in the more recent times with Harden, where it would be preseason and they would be playing in China. Because I remember when Stephon Marbury, who had been away from the NBA for years at the time, finally met with Adam Silver, met with some other NBA execs. That was in China. They came out to China and the Rockets were playing there. Now, the prospect of the Rockets ever getting screen time in China ever again is laughable. But again, that's another issue I don't really want to go over. But...
yeah, that's something I didn't even know too, which is kind of funny, you learn new things every day, so that's a good thing too. So looking at the schedule, not just the opening night game versus Boston, they got games against the Atlanta Hawks, against Trae Young the very next few days, and then they got New Orleans, and then a rematch with the Cavaliers, who they beat in the first round of the playoffs. So it's a pretty tough schedule to start the season, and the Knicks have probably one of the hardest schedules this season.
Well, I feel like in terms of scheduling in the NBA, we don't make that big. We don't overanalyze the schedule like we do in the NFL. In the NFL, because there's only 16 games, scheduling really matters. But in the NBA, where you have 82 games, half of them at home, half away, you're going to be playing everybody. So obviously, you want to get off to a great start. And they'll be battle tested early, like you said, with the Celtics. I think that game is in Boston to start the year.
I believe it's in New York, actually.
Oh, it's in New York.
Yeah, it's in New York. Yeah.
Okay, I'd imagine that's got to be one of the primetime games this year, of the over 20. But I feel like most NBA teams, when you look at the schedule, you kind of start to hit your stride with that around December. Because there's a stretch in December where they play at Utah, at Phoenix, at the Clippers and Lakers, at the Nets. I think that's 5 in a row away. And then back-to-back at home against Milwaukee, and then immediately back on the road at OKC, at Orlando. And I'm one of the early speakers out there saying that, place some bets on the Magic to be a play-in team this year. They're my sneaky team. But that's in December when it's starting to get a lot more interesting and players are kind of I don't know what's the best way to say it, but I kind of feel like the NBA season doesn't start to me until around Christmas all the way into the postseason. The first month or so of the season, most teams are trying out new stuff, playing at half speed. I wouldn't say half speed, but not as urgently, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's kind of like with your 76ers when Jimmy Butler got traded to Philadelphia. They were trying to figure things out in that 2019 season.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about how that season ended.
Yeah, that was a tough one for sure.
This franchise still hasn't gotten over it.
Yeah.
But this is not a 76er. I could take over the whole podcast and rant about them for like 2 hours rather than 30 minutes. But continue on.
Yeah, so that speaking of Christmas Day, you were just mentioning the back-to-back with the Milwaukee Bucks playing against one of the best teams in the NBA. That's happening a lot more often where the Knicks are playing a certain team back-to-back games, like back-to-back days or every other day. And tell me about that a little bit. What do you think is there a benefit of that, or is there like just maybe figuring out what that team does and then beating them the next time if you lose the first time? Is there a benefit to that, you think?
I think there is, yeah, because... And I love that it's on Christmas, I can't speak for everyone on Christmas, but for me, Christmas is getting presents, a big meal, and sitting down at my sofa watching NBA all day. So everybody's going to be watching. And it's a way to like make a statement to to NBA watchers everywhere that like, hey, we are legit. And for them playing the night before or 2 nights before on the 23rd, I guess it's just kind of a way for them and both teams, both the Bucks and the Knicks, to save on like air travel, and like you said, maybe like get some adjustments going, because who knows, maybe they could meet in the postseason. I thought they were going to meet in the postseason this past season, and then the Miami just had to get in the way. But that's kind of how I look at it.
As Miami does so. So another thing we have to mention is Jalen Brunson. Like, nobody thought that this was going to be the season that he had this past year. People were saying, like, for example, I'm going to bring this up. Nick Wright. He said this was the saddest sweepstakes in the history of the New York Knicks.
That's a little bit much, because Jalen Brunson in the playoffs prior, because he was good in the playoffs at the perfect time, like right when you're about to hit restricted free agency. Now I've got my own qualms with Nick Wright, but that's related to the NFL. But yeah, continue on about Brunson.
So it just shocked me, honestly. And then right when the season hits, I'm seeing what this guy does, and beyond my expectations. Like, I didn't expect Jalen Brunson to be this good, just coming off of a couple of years in Dallas playing with Luka Doncic. And it really surprised me how much he was bought in to the franchise.
Well, I believe one of his family members had ties to the Knicks prior.
Yeah, his dad Rick.
Yeah, I believe he was associated with and isn't Leon Rose his like godfather or something?
So it's something like that, I think. I just know that Jalen's dad played for New York over 20 years ago, I'm pretty sure.
That too. But I don't know. I was a bit more high on Brunson because I've watched that guy. I've watched that guy since 2016 at Villanova. He was a freshman on the 2016 team that won the Natty over UNC. Stuck around for the 2018 team. So because I love me some Jalen Brunson, and there were flashes of what he could do when he didn't have to share the spotlight with Luka. Because if you remember back to that postseason run prior to restricted free agency, when Luka tweaked his calf and they played Utah the first 3 games, Jalen Brunson balled out in those 3 games. It gave him a 2-1 lead before Luka came back and eventually closed him out. But I feel like seeing what Jalen Brunson has done without Luka and without sharing Luka's spotlight, it shows that I don't know if he can be the undisputed best player on a team that can win a championship. Now, if you he can be kind of like what Jamal Murray is with Nikola Jokic. Now, say, if they do get Giannis or Joel Embiid or Karl Anthony Towns or something, then you got something that you can go places with. But I just kind of feel like Jalen Brunson, I was higher on him than everyone else. I was disappointed to see he didn't make the All-Star team last year. But I don't know. It is what it is. I was one of the believers rather than the doubters.
Yeah, it just shocked me too that, when the All-Star game came out and the voters were coming in, it was all Julius Randle votes and like none for Jalen Brunson. I mean, even a Derrick Rose vote came in. Which was pretty shocking too.
Well, those are obviously I'm not going to say it's the All-Star voting. It's not as big of a popularity contest as it was like 10 years ago, because now I believe it's players and coaches are 50%, and then the fans are the other 50% of the current All-Star voting. And let's be real, like most like average NBA fans weren't really following like Jalen Brunson. Like they want to see like KD, LeBron, Jokic, Embiid, Kyrie. So it doesn't surprise me that he didn't make the All-Star game. Now, Randall had a little bit more clout to work with, I guess, because he had already been an All-Star in years past. I believe that was not the year after the bubble year, I believe.
Yeah, the 2021 season where he was an All-Star and they lost to Atlanta in the first round. So another player we got to mention, Josh Hart. They traded for him at the deadline last season. They traded Cam Reddish. They traded Brian Arcidiacono, who they just got back.
They got him back.
I believe they signed him back because they had room on the roster apparently.
They're bringing back all the Nova guys.
Yeah, it's like a Nova quadruple now.
Yeah.
But anyways, Josh Hart, the toughness that he brought, and just the grit, the grind. Is there a player that he reminds you of, like from the past, or just like what, like how tougher can he be next season? Because obviously he's not going to be a starter. He's going to come off the bench, and Quentin Grimes is going to be at the 3.
I'm trying to think of a comp, but a good one's not really coming to me, so I may have to push that aside for a bit. But yeah, they brought him in from Portland, I believe, at the deadline last year. Now, Cam Reddish, they took a swing. It didn't work out. He wasn't a good fit. Just acknowledge it, move on. Josh Hart it was an even bigger trade at the deadline in retrospect, because, again, he was a very big part in the upset of the Cavs. He was your hustle guy. He was able to play defense, hit big open shots, even facilitated nicely. I mean, I know his stats don't jump off the screen, but he just does a little bit of everything. He's kind of like the glue guy, kind of like the Draymond for this team. Now, he's obviously nowhere near the level of Draymond, but I mean, I guess I kind of thought of a comp right there. It may be a stretch of a comp, but I don't know. And again, another Nova guy. Love me some Josh Hart. I was glad that to see him shine. I kind of forget how he did against Miami, because to me, from what I recall against Miami, only Jalen Brunson really showed up in that series. I think Barrett had his moments, and Randall had one good game here or there.
Yeah, the other thing I love about Josh Hart, he's a guard who can rebound the ball and just jump for that, and like
that too.
It's like Jalen Brunson just sacrificing for your body. That's like something that really caught my eye. And another stat, I'm pretty sure that's true. I'm pretty sure when they got Josh Hart, they went 17-8 all the way to the playoffs or through the rest of the postseason. I think that was the rest of the season. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong though, but
you might be right about that, because I remember at the time of the trade they were kind of just hanging in the 6 seed, 7 seedish range. I think Miami was even ahead of them at one point, which is funny to think of in retrospect. But yeah, they got on a run. Now, I don't know what's the best way to say it. It was a great trade. It helped him out, beat Cleveland. Again, I don't know what his contract situation is looking like, though, because he is another like asset that they could use down the line if they want to make a big trade. I know this is all speculative. It's like, and we've seen this before where several like big like trade targets are linked to the Knicks. I mean, we all remember 2019 with KD and Kyrie. And I actually want to take this over real quick.
Go for it.
Now, seeing what the Nets became, are you happy now that they did not sign KD and Kyrie back in 2019?
I didn't even want them to get KD and Kyrie in the first place. I was like,
really?
Let's roll with it, because you think about what happened in Brooklyn, all the drama, all the like stuff that happened with Kyrie not getting the vaccine and all that stuff. You know, it was really embarrassing to the league. And I remember I heard Stephen A. say, I think Kyrie should retire. I was like,
clearly you don't want to play basketball no more.
Yeah. And it's just, I just didn't like the way the Nets were running things, and they bring in a rookie head coach in Steve Nash who doesn't know what he's doing, and it didn't make sense to me. They had Jacques Vaughn, who was clearly a better coach since he's still with the team, obviously, but think about all these assets they've gotten back for KD and Kyrie. they're definitely going somewhere because Mikal Bridges is a really good player. He's really good.
Another Nova guy, but he is a building block for the Nets. I know we're like pivoting to the Nets real quick, but I'm going to switch it back to the Knicks by not signing KD and Kyrie. Rather, because in the last like decade, ever since LeBron's decision, we've seen like player-created super teams pop up much more often. Can you think of any other than, I guess, maybe Golden State? But Golden State was built organically through the draft. Like, only KD was like the big-name free agent that they added. Like, think of the Clippers with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It's a disaster. The era of that duo has been a disaster. And the Nets, obviously, disaster. So I feel like the Knicks, and it's weird because the Knicks are so infamous because they tried to do that with Melo and Amari Stoudemire, and that didn't work out. So I don't know. I'm a fan of a team like building through the draft and maybe making a big trade down the line once you're a team on the cusp of something great. And I feel like that's what they're about to do, and it's refreshing to see.
Yeah, that's also because, like, I love that you mentioned Amari Stoudemire before because that was at the end of his prime, and it was a lot different because right when he left Phoenix, and Carmelo was, like, towards near the end of his prime, but he still had a lot of time left, you know? So I think it was good. It's just Amari Stoudemire couldn't be healthy. That was the only thing back then. But obviously they got other players around Carmelo and not just him, and that's why they had so much success for that 2013 season. That was about 10 years ago, when they went to the second round as the 2 seed.
Well, yeah, that was another team that, I mean, they had like, I remember at the time the Knicks like were building like through the draft, and then they gutted all of their assets to get Melo from the Nuggets. And I believe one of those assets became Jamal Murray, which was funny enough for Denver, but I'm trying to think, like, Steve Novak, I believe, was the starting shooting guard for that team.
In 2012, I'm pretty sure he was starting shooting guard, yeah.
Raymond Felton, another guy they brought in through trade. Jason Kidd, a free agent signing.
Tyson Chandler.
Tyson Chandler was a sign and trade from the Mavericks. J.R. Smith, I think, came alongside Melo in the trade. I could be wrong about that.
I think, no, they got him at the trade deadline the next season. They signed him or something, I'm pretty sure.
So it's just kind of like player-created super teams have an incredibly short shelf life. Like even the Miami Heat Big Three, we thought LeBron was going to be there for 8 years. He was there for 4, and now they accomplished everything in those 4 years. But still, sustained success has to be built through the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you just start with, you can get star players right away. Because I'll bring this up for example, Miami when they drafted Dwayne Wade back in 2003. They built up. They traded for Shaq. They won a championship in 2006. Then they get LeBron and Bosh, and then they win 2 more. And it happens like that, That's how you build things up. That's the one thing that the Knicks are starting to realize now. Once they got RJ Barrett, they're like, we can do something now. We can actually do something.
And it's weird because I don't remember what the consensus was at the time they brought Leon Rose in. Where was he prior to that? I think it was Worldwide West or something.
Yeah, I believe he was somewhere there, but they hired him in 2020.
He took over for who was it? Steve Mills?
Steve Mills. I think it was not Steve. I forget the guy. Not Steve Mills.
Scott Perry.
Scott Perry. Yeah.
Oh,
Scott
my
Perry.
Goodness.
Scott Perry. Good old Scott Perry.
And I guess Leon Rose. He saw what the team needed to do. He was the one who fired Fizdale. Was Fizdale already fired by the time they hired Leon Rose, or did he fire Fizdale?
I think Fizdale was gone before Leon was there. I think because they hired Leon during COVID.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember David Fizdale got fired in like the middle of. I think he got fired at the start of the 2019 season. And what's funny to look back at that, I believe Stephen A. was vouching for David Fizdale at the time because. I don't know, I think Fizdale's a friend of Stephen A., and he also worked with LeBron in Miami during the Big 3 years. And that's why I just kind of feel like LeBron can make any coach look good. Like, there are some players that can make anybody look like they can coach. Like, think of Luke Walton with the Warriors when Steve Kerr was out for the start of the 73-9 year. That team was so good that they could have made either of us look like we could coach an NBA team. That's how stupid good that team was. So, like Tibbs obviously had a resume that deserved to be hired for. So, Yeah, I don't know. Is it weird to see how far the Knicks have come over the past 5 years? Because 5 years ago, we were laughing at them for not getting KD and Kyrie.
Yeah, now they've got a potential superstar alongside Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. And one other thing we got to mention before we get off, Quentin Grimes. The amount of growth he made last season was enormous. His rookie year, he came out of Houston back when the Knicks traded for Kemba Walker in the offseason with that buyout from Oklahoma City. But with Quentin Grimes now in the 9-man rotation and most likely in the starting lineup, what do you expect from him this season? Because he's going to make a lot more growth than he did last season.
I mean, last year he had 11 points per game, had 38% from three, which definitely gets the job done in the modern NBA. And I mean, he almost doubled his points per game. His shooting splits went up way more than the prior year. So I think another year of growth in the system, another year with Brunson. I mean, it's crazy to not expect him to make a jump. Kind of like, I don't know, he kind of reminds me of Austin Reeves on the Lakers, where obviously Reeves, he's not a star, but he can be a part of a great thing if you ask him to do the right thing. So yeah, crazy. I think and if he doesn't make another jump and he's just kind of like who he was last year, you'll still take that as your fifth option on a playoff team.
Yeah, because I think he's sort of stepping into that like 6-man role like Emmanuel quickly did last season. So that's something we're definitely going to look forward to as training camp approaches soon. But that'll be it for today for episode number 1 of Empire State Hoops. And this has been Adam Rothschild alongside Matthew Vargo. And we will see you next time in episode number 2.
Thanks for tuning in.